Hesitation is the quiet architect of failure, the unseen force that dismantles potential long before any external opponent has the chance to interfere. People often imagine that what holds them back is the resistance of others, the judgments of society, or the barriers placed by circumstance. Yet none of these have real power unless you grant it to them. The world can place obstacles around you, but only your own hesitation can bury you beneath them. The moment you pause, doubt, or question your own authority over your life, you surrender the battlefield without a fight. Hesitation is not merely lack of movement. It is a form of internal sabotage. It whispers that the moment is not right, that you are not ready, that you must wait for some invisible permission before acting. It tells you to rehearse your courage instead of using it. It convinces you that failure is guaranteed, that risk is too heavy, that change is too unstable. But hesitation is a master illusionist. It makes you imagine dangers that have not happened, consequences that are exaggerated, and limitations that exist only because you have accepted them as real. When hesitation grows, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The longer you delay, the more your confidence dissolves. You begin to believe that others have control over your fate. You start thinking that you cannot move because circumstances are fixed, or resources are missing, or approval has not been given. But hesitation created this belief, not the outside world. Those who rise do not wait for conditions to align. They seize whatever fragments reality offers and force alignment through will. Those who fall do so because they surrender their authority to their own internal uncertainty. Hesitation thrives in the mind that seeks safety over sovereignty. It disguises itself as caution, prudence, or preparation. It claims to be protecting you from humiliation, disappointment, or loss. But what it truly protects you from is progress. It chains you to the familiar, even when the familiar has become a prison. It keeps you living the same year repeatedly, calling it a life. It convinces you that movement will break you when, in truth, stagnation is the real threat. External enemies are easier to defeat than internal hesitation. A rival can be outmaneuvered, a critic can be ignored, a barrier can be climbed or destroyed. But hesitation is embedded inside your decisions, your emotions, your beliefs. It masquerades as rationality, disguising its cowardice as wisdom. To overcome it, you must examine your own thoughts with ruthless clarity. Every excuse must be interrogated. Every delay must be challenged. Every fear must be stripped of its disguise. Only then can you see hesitation for what it truly is, the single force capable of stopping you before the world ever attempts to. Strength against hesitation comes from action, even imperfect action. The moment you move, hesitation loses its grip. Action creates momentum, and momentum becomes power. Power then becomes confidence, and confidence becomes the destruction of doubt. Those who act, even with uncertainty, ultimately outrun those who hesitate while waiting for certainty. Certainty is a luxury earned by those who move, not a precondition for movement. The world does not belong to those who pause. It belongs to those who advance. History remembers people who acted boldly, not people who waited. Progress is not awarded to the cautious, but to the decisive. Every opportunity is seized by those who do not allow hesitation to negotiate the terms of their life. You must be willing to make choices without the comfort of guarantees. You must act when others are still questioning the temperature of the water. You must step forward while the rest remain anchored by their own internal delays. To defeat hesitation, you must build a mindset that treats doubt as noise rather than instruction. You must cultivate an identity rooted in self, direction rather than reassurance. You must accept that fear will always exist at the edges of new territory, but refuse to let it dictate your steps. Only when you recognize that hesitation is the true adversary will you stop granting it authority. The world cannot stop the person who refuses to stop themselves. Power in life does not begin with muscle, wealth, or position. It begins with perception, how you see the world and how the world sees you. The battlefield of reality is shaped not by what is true, but by what is believed. Actions, intentions, and outcomes are all filtered through perception before they ever take form. When you master perception, you gain the ability to reshape the meaning of any event, the strength of any challenge, and the direction of any situation. Those who fail to understand this live at the mercy of circumstances. Those who master it bend circumstances into instruments of advantage. Perception is the lens that determines whether an obstacle is a dead end or an invitation. Two people face the same circumstance. One sees disaster and collapses. The other sees strategy and adapts. The difference between them is not the situation itself, but the interpretation. When you control interpretation, you control your response. And when you control your response, you gain influence over the outcome. The world may send storms, but perception decides whether you drown or whether you learn to navigate the currents. Mastering perception begins with mastering the narrative you tell yourself. Every thought is a frame, every assumption a doorway, every belief a command. If you approach challenges believing they are attacks, you will feel cornered. If you regard them as opportunities to maneuver, you will feel empowered. The internal story you create becomes the blueprint of your external reality. The untrained mind reacts to events. The disciplined mind assigns meaning to them. Once you determine the meaning, you determine the power. Just as important as yourself, perception is the perception you project onto others. People respond not to your intentions, but to the image you present. Confidence, strength, and direction are not qualities you wait to feel. They are qualities you display until they become inseparable from your identity. If you appear uncertain, hesitant, or reactive, others will take authority over you. If you appear composed, decisive, and self-sustaining, others will instinctively adjust their behavior around you. Human interaction is shaped far more by perception than by logic. People do not follow the strongest person. They follow the person who appears strongest. Mastering perception is not deception, it is strategy. It is the understanding that truth alone does not move the world. Interpretation does. You can possess talent, intelligence, or skill, but without the ability to shape how these qualities are seen, they remain invisible and unused. Power emerges when you decide how you want to be perceived and consistently act in alignment with that identity. Those who shape perception shape influence. Those who shape influence shape outcomes. Another aspect of perception is how you view adversity. When misfortune strikes, most people collapse into complaint, letting their emotions dictate their interpretation. But adversity holds no inherent meaning. It becomes destructive only when you perceive it as punishment. If instead you regard adversity as opportunity, as a sharpening stone, a lesson, a catalyst, you transform weakness into strength. Perception becomes alchemy. You turn setbacks into strategy and injuries into armor. This is how disadvantages become tools of advancement. Mastering perception also means recognizing how people interpret strength. The world respects consistency, not chaos. It trusts calmness, not panic. It follows those who remain composed while others are overwhelmed. When you maintain an unshakable presence, steady voice, deliberate action, unwavering focus, you communicate that nothing can destabilize you. And when people believe you cannot be destabilized, they behave differently. Conflicts shrink, opposition weakens, alliances form, opportunities open, all because perception shifted in your favor. Perception is also crucial in determining the limits you place on yourself. Many people imprison themselves inside beliefs inherited from others, doubts passed down by family, fears absorbed from society, limitations suggested by failures. They do not realize these beliefs are perceptions, not truths. When you challenge these perceptions and redefine them, you free yourself from invisible chains. You gain the ability to act with autonomy rather than conditioning. Self-perception becomes the foundation of personal power. To master perception, you must become the architect of your own meaning. You must decide what events signify, what challenges represent, and what your identity contains. When someone underestimates you, you perceive it as an advantage. When a plan shifts, you perceive it as an opening. When circumstances grow difficult, you perceive them as proof that you are moving into territory worth conquering. This reorientation turns the world into a map of possibilities rather than a maze of threats. Power begins when you stop accepting the meaning others assign to your life and start creating your own. It begins when you stop reacting and start interpreting. It begins when you understand that perception is the first weapon, the first shield, and the first foundation of every action you take. Obstacles are often viewed as walls built to deny progress, as forces working against your ambition, as evidence that your path has been rejected by fate. Yet obstacles themselves hold no intention, no malice, no decision-making power. They are neutral structures, shaped only by the meaning you attach to them. When you perceive an obstacle as a threat, you respond with fear, hesitation, or retreat. When you perceive it as a tool, you respond with strategy, adaptation, and growth. The difference between defeat and advancement is found entirely in the interpretation. Obstacles do not break people. People break themselves when they misunderstand the purpose of resistance. Every obstacle carries information about the path you are on, information about your current abilities, and information about the strength required for the next stage of your life. An obstacle is a signal, not a sentence. It reveals your weaknesses with clarity and forces you to confront what you would otherwise avoid. It highlights the areas where discipline must be sharpened, where patience must be strengthened, where intelligence must be elevated. Without obstacles, you would remain untested, unchanged, and unprepared for the weight of greater responsibilities. Growth demands friction. Advancement demands resistance. Without pressure, nothing becomes stronger. Obstacles are also mirrors. They reflect the truth of your intentions. Many people claim they desire greatness, yet the moment difficulty appears, their desire dissolves. The obstacle exposes that their ambition was shallow, rooted in fantasy rather than resolve. But for those whose ambition is sincere, the obstacle becomes evidence that they are walking a path worth pursuing. If the journey were effortless, everyone would reach the summit. The presence of obstacles confirms the rarity of the destination. In this way, obstacles become markers, not of failure, but of significance. When you understand that obstacles are tools, you begin to use them to your advantage. A closed door forces you to look for another entrance. A rejection forces you to refine your approach. A failure forces you to upgrade your strategy. Each time you adapt, you become more capable. Each time you advance despite difficulty, you become more formidable. This transformation is not theoretical. It is earned through direct confrontation with resistance. You learn that obstacles are not endpoints but pivot points, moments where your direction adjusts, your understanding deepens, and your capabilities expand. Obstacles also reveal the intentions of others. When people face barriers, their true nature emerges. Some use obstacles as excuses to abandon their goals. Some complain, blame, and retreat. Others attempt to deceive themselves into believing the obstacle is too large to overcome. Yet there are a few who see the obstacle as a challenge that must be dominated, a lesson that must be absorbed, a passage that must be earned. These individuals distinguish themselves not by avoiding difficulty, but by engaging it with purpose. Their relationship with obstacles becomes a source of power because they do not allow external resistance to dictate internal direction. To treat obstacles as tools, you must shift the way you approach them. Instead of asking why they appear, you ask what they demand of you. Instead of seeking escape, you seek understanding. Instead of wishing the obstacle would disappear, you question how it can strengthen you. This mindset transforms every struggle into a form of training. Hardship becomes practice. Setbacks become data. Opposition becomes instruction. Life is no longer something happening to you. It becomes something shaping you for the responsibilities you aim to carry. Obstacles also prevent mediocrity from contaminating your ambition. Without them, anyone could claim mastery. Anyone could pretend they are destined for greatness. Obstacles separate the committed from the casual, the disciplined from the impulsive, the resilient from the fragile. They force you to develop qualities that cannot be faked: endurance, resourcefulness, patience, precision, and persistence. These qualities cannot be purchased or borrowed. They must be earned through experience. In this way, obstacles serve as filters that refine you into someone who can sustain the success you pursue. When obstacles are seen as threats, they provoke fear. When obstacles are seen as tools, they provoke strategy. Fear narrows vision, but strategy expands perspective. Fear convinces you that you are trapped, but strategy reveals multiple paths forward. Fear makes you believe the obstacle is permanent, but strategy shows you it is temporary. This shift in perception gives you authority over the situation, allowing you to act with confidence rather than panic. Understanding obstacles as tools also frees you from emotional chaos. You stop personalizing hardship. You stop believing the universe is against you. You stop interpreting difficulty as a sign that you should quit. Instead, you accept that resistance is part of the process, a confirmation that you are in motion rather than standing still. You become calmer, more focused, more deliberate. You act with clarity even when circumstances are heavy. This emotional steadiness becomes a weapon, one that allows you to navigate situations that would overwhelm others. Ultimately, obstacles shape the person you must become in order to carry the life you desire. They transform potential into ability, ambition into action, and intention into identity. Through them, you discover not only the limits of your current self, but the possibilities of your future self. Every truth drawn from these principles returns to one core reality. Your life bends to the force of your will. The hesitation within you is the only true adversary. The perception you shape becomes the foundation of your influence. The obstacles before you are nothing more than instruments designed to refine you into someone capable of commanding their own path. When these elements align, an untouchable mind, a controlled interpretation of the world, and a strategic embrace of resistance, you become someone who cannot be halted by circumstance, threatened by opposition, or broken by difficulty. Power grows from within, radiates outward, and reshapes everything it touches.